Welcome to today's explainer for May 21st, 2026. Look, we're bypassing all the noise today and diving straight into some absolutely crucial updates. We're talking the Supreme Court's major ruling on caste enumeration, the looming delimitation crisis for southern states, massive geopolitical shifts over at the Strait of Hormuz, and honestly, the brand new reality of drone warfare. So, let's strictly focus on synthesizing these daily events into high-yield, actionable insights for your prelims and mains prep. Let's get right into it.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, polity and federalism. Second, judiciary, ethics, and rights. Third, global relations and security. And we'll wrap it all up with some potential mains questions and a rapid revision.
All right, starting off with Section 1, Polity and Federalism Dynamics. We're going to link today's breaking news straight to your GS Paper 2 frameworks.
Okay, we're kicking things off with a massive recent development. The Supreme Court just dismissed a plea against caste enumeration. A three-judge bench, led by the Chief Justice, actually upheld the Cabinet Committee's decision to include caste enumeration in the second phase of Census 2027. And this is the key phrase you need to remember. They explicitly called it a policy domain matter. For your exams, you absolutely need to understand the constitutional separation of powers going on here. The judiciary simply cannot mandate or block the government from collecting specific demographic data. Why? Because data collection falls squarely under executive policymaking, not judicial review. You should connect this breaking news directly to the static core, which is the Census Act of 1948. That's the statutory bedrock under which the decennial census is conducted by the Registrar General. Keep in mind, until the 2011 census, only scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are systematically enumerated by caste. So this 2027 inclusion, it is a massive structural shift in how we collect data.
Now looking at state-level governance, we have two distinct events that perfectly illustrate the ongoing friction in federal dynamics. Let's draw a thematic narrative here between internal and external friction. In West Bengal, 10 days post-election, a cabinet expansion is literally still pending. This has resulted in a single leader holding 42 portfolios. That is internal, state-level political friction directly impacting day-to-day governance. Meanwhile, down south in Kerala, the new UDF government has officially scrapped the 530-kilometer semi-high-speed K-rail, also known as the Silver Line project. This project faced huge opposition over environmental concerns, economic viability, and fundamentally a lack of central approval. So this right here represents external friction, the classic center-state conflict over large infrastructure and environmental governance. Both of these scenarios provide excellent live case studies for your GS Paper 2 answers.
Moving on, the delimitation crisis is definitely a complex issue, but it's like a giant puzzle we can easily break down. This shows how historical constitutional amendments have led straight to the representational anxieties currently being voiced by southern states. Back in 1976, Step 1, the 42nd Amendment froze delimitation to 1971 data. Why did they do this? Essentially, to actively encourage states to implement family planning without the fear of losing their proportional seats in the Lok Sabha. Fast forward to Step 2, the 84th Amendment in 2002 extended this freeze to the first census after 2026. And that brings us to Step 3, our current political reality. Southern states, having successfully managed their demographics over the decades, are now facing a potential penalty in the form of lost parliamentary representation.
So what does this all mean? Well, the crucial metric at the absolute heart of this debate is 2.1. This is the total fertility rate replacement level. Imagine successfully implementing national population policies, stabilizing your demographics, and dropping your state's fertility rate well below this 2.1 metric, while the national average continues to sit around 2.0. This creates a fascinating but really difficult paradox. States that did exactly the right thing for the country's resource management are now risking their political voice and legislative weight in Parliament. It's a really tough spot.
Before we move on, let's clear up some major prelims traps right now so you don't get caught out. First, the Delimitation Commission is constituted under an Act of Parliament. It is not a permanent constitutional body. Make sure you remember that. Second, Article 82 actually mandates the readjustment of constituencies after each and every census. The freeze we just talked about, that's a specific legislated exception. Finally, please do not confuse your amendments. It was the 84th Amendment that extended the freeze, not the 42nd, which originally initiated it.
All right. Section 2, Judiciary, Ethics, and Rights. Let's navigate the boundaries of judicial expression and accountability.
You might have seen this striking and, honestly, quite controversial oral remark from the bench recently. It really brought the debate on institutional limits into sharp focus. Now, while it was later clarified that these specific remarks were directed at individuals practicing law with fake degrees, the broader discussion is so important. It revolves around judicial standards and language. This perfectly highlights the 1997 Restatement of Values of Judicial Life. To put it simply, this restatement is effectively an internal code of conduct adopted by the Supreme Court to maintain judicial dignity and public trust. It outlines the principle that a judge should not yield to spasmodic sentiment or use intemperate language that wounds. It strictly distinguishes personal frustration from legitimate, rigorous Socratic questioning during a hearing. And the ultimate analytical tool for this debate on judicial accountability is the 2021 Vijaya Bhaskar Doctrine. Think of it as a constitutional filter. This Supreme Court ruling clarifies that formal judicial opinion resides strictly within written judgments and orders. It does not reside in oral observations made during hearings. You can totally use this doctrine in your mains answers to argue that while robust oral debates in court are a necessary part of the truth-finding process, they just don't hold the weight of formal jurisprudence. They must remain bounded by established judicial standards.
Shifting gears to Section 3, Global Relations and Security, we're mapping strategic dialogues and the evolving battlefield.
Okay, let's zoom out. Global conflicts are currently sending massive ripple effects through international supply chains. The Iran-US-Israel conflict has caused dangerous closures right at the Strait of Hormuz. This is a critical choke point. Why? Because 20% of the world's petroleum passes through it, and its disruption directly impacts India's LNG imports from Qatar. In response to these shifting global dynamics, strategic realignments are seriously accelerating. We are seeing a major push for the India-EU Free Trade Agreement, heavily supported by Italy. And crucially, we're also seeing the rise of Italy's Mati plan. What exactly is Italy trying to do in Africa with this plan? Well, it's fundamentally aimed at curbing migration into Europe by fostering massive energy and food security development right on the African continent. It's essentially creating a brand new axis of economic cooperation.
While we're tracking these global shifts, watch out for these specific prelims traps regarding international bodies. Note this carefully. The Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, is absolutely not a UN Security Council body. It is a specialized UN agency headquartered in Rome. Furthermore, the Guardia di Finanza, that is a financial law enforcement entity investigating tax evasion and money laundering in Italy. It is not a traditional military defense force. Don't let them trick you on that. Also, understanding the structural evolution and mandates of the Quad and BRICS is essential so you don't confuse diplomatic dialogues with formal defense treaties. Let's be clear, the Quad is focused on maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific. It is strictly not a military alliance. On the other hand, as India holds the rotating presidency of BRICS in 2026, you've got to recognize the sheer geopolitical scale of its 2024 expansion. BRICS shifted from a small group of emerging economies into a massive geopolitical bloc by welcoming Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. This integrated key Middle Eastern energy powers into the alliance, which fundamentally changes its global weight.
Moving over to internal security. On the first anniversary of Operation Cinder, defense doctrines are openly acknowledging that drones are an absolute evolution within the air domain. They aren't just hype anymore. We are witnessing the establishment of a totally new combat zone called the air littoral. To understand this, simply picture the airspace right above the ground where helicopters and small drones operate. It's positioned just below the coordinating altitude where traditional fast fighter jets fly. This specific lower airspace is reshaping ground combat entirely. It requires integrated counter-drone networks like India's planned Sudarshan Chakra, targeted for 2035, to defend against these emerging low-altitude swarms.
And the rise of drones brings an aggressive economic shift to modern warfare. Think about it. It is economically impossible to fire a $50,000 traditional Iron Dome missile at a $500 drone. The math literally just doesn't work. That is exactly why directed energy weapons, like the Iron Beam laser at just $2 to $3.50 per shot, are completely rewriting the rules of modern defense. It's radically changing the cost-to-kill ratio and making swarm defense financially viable for the first time.
All right, Section 4, Mains Questions and Rapid Revision. Let's do a high-speed consolidation of everything we've covered today.
Let's rapidly apply this into potential mains questions. For this GS2 polity question on the UAPA, your answer absolutely must explicitly weigh Section 43D5, which sets incredibly strict conditions for bail, against the Article 21 right to personal liberty. You have to reference the K.A. Najib judgment of 2021. The vital legal mechanism established in the Najib ruling is that statutory restrictions on bail under the UAPA effectively melt away if there is no likelihood of a trial finishing anytime soon. This protects the constitutional right to a speedy trial. This is incredibly relevant to the Andrade case context, where pretrial custody has stretched over 5 years.
Here's another highly probable GS2 question. It challenges you to critically examine the arguments for and against lifting the delimitation freeze. This requires you to balance the representational inequities of the 1971 census freeze against the demographic successes of the southern states. You need to navigate that complex north-south political dimension objectively without taking sides by simply presenting the constitutional friction as it exists.
Moving over to GS3 Energy, you must be prepared to discuss systemic power sector reforms to address the growing electricity demand-supply gap. Your answer should integrate battery energy storage systems and time-of-day or TODI tariffs. Time-of-day tariffs are brilliant. They incentivize consumers to shift their electricity usage to off-peak hours by making power cheaper when renewable generation, like solar, is high during the day. Then they make it more expensive during the peak evening hours. These are absolutely essential demand-side and supply-side management tools.
I want you to keep this stark number in your head: 137%. That is the prison occupancy rate in 11 high GDP states. How on earth can our prisons be this over capacity? Well, because a staggering 77% of inmates are under trials. These are people who haven't even been convicted of a crime yet. This statistic is the perfect, hard-hitting analytical hook for your GS2 governance papers, your GS4 ethics papers, or even an essay regarding the realities of the criminal justice system.
Okay, rapid-fire revision time. Screen grab this table right now so you can lock these facts in. Operation Sindor took place from May 7 to May 10, 2025. The Andrabi UAPA pretrial custody has lasted exactly 5 years and 9 months. The scrapped K-Rail Silverline project spanned 530 kilometers from Thiruvananthapuram to Kasaragod, and the Pahalgam attack occurred on April 22, 2025. Recalling these exact data points will add immense credibility and precision to your mains arguments, for sure.
I'm going to leave you with this provocative essay thesis to reflect upon today. Looking at the data we've covered, when a system defaults to incarceration over adjudication, with millions of pending cases and massive under-trial populations, are we genuinely protecting society, or are we structurally threatening our core democratic values? Think about that. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Explainer. Keep reviewing these concepts, stay focused, and I will see you in the next one.
If you're ready to really practice all 8 mains questions from today's news, and you want to get your hands on prelims MCQs and detailed notes, go ahead and download the complete PDF. Just scan the QR code on your screen or use the link in the description to join our Telegram channel. Keep up the amazing work, stay consistent, and I will see you in the next Explainer.